So the other night at about 2 o'clock in the morning, I was bored and I decided I want to take Owen Wilson saying wow and turn it into a pad sound because that's how I choose to live my life, apparently. It gave me the idea that it'd actually be quite cool to take that concept and use it to look at Glitchmachines Palindrome, which I've recently purchased, and just demonstrate what it can do and maybe talk a bit about granular synthesis in general, which is the method of synthesis it uses. So first what I did was I went to YouTube and I found a video by the channel Own Energy. It's Own and Energy stuck together into one word. For some whatever reason, they've gone through every Owen Wilson film and apparently like taken every clip of him saying wow in them and compiled it into one big long video. So I went to the YouTube to MP3 converter and downloaded that. And I've gone through and I've found different clips of Owen saying wow where there's not many sound effects or music, so that I'll be able to use those small bits of audio and load them into Palindrome and then do stuff with them. Just a little disclaimer here, right? Do not use copyrighted material in your tracks if you're going to release them, unless you're willing to go through the process of getting them cleared, which will probably mean you'll have to pay some money towards the copyright owners. It's fine to, download some audio and mess about with it for a bit of fun, but if you're actually going to properly release something, use either a sample pack that you have the rights to use, something that you've either purchased or that has been released and it's royalty free and you're sure that it is, or use recordings that you've actually made yourself. If you're using Logic 10, although I assume most DAWs will be kind of similar, what you're going to have to do is find your bit of audio that you want. I mean, I'm just taking this randomly here, but it's probably not even a wow. And you're going to have to bounce it to its own individual clip, because currently that's just like a small segment of the whole clip. So I just want this small chunk of audio. So I'm going to type Command B, and that'll give me this menu to bounce the region in place. I'm just going to leave the settings as they are and put normalize on. So it basically takes the peak up to 0 decibels full signal. So I'm just going to name this not a wow probs, and I'm going to miss the O out, and then I'm going to bounce that. So now that's its own separate little audio clip. And I know like in some other DAWs it might be a bit slicker, you can just drag and drop these things, but you actually can't in Logic. So what you're going to need to do is go to the project folder, and you always want to be saving your project as a folder so you can access the audio you've bounced. I don't think you should really ever be saving it as a package, because if you do like alternate versions of a mix, or you make big changes to a track so you want to save an extra version of it so you can go back, every time you save it, it'll be resaving all of the audio along with the everything else. So if you got it as a folder, you can save loads of different versions of your project and you just have the one audio files folder there, and it'll always access that folder, and it just saves on your hard drive space as well. I think it's a bit neater as well, having everything in a folder. So you go to audio files and you'll find everything that you bounce. So here I've got my probably not a wow thing, which probably won't play because with the OBS setup I've got. But here I've got all of the wows that I've bounced, and they're just little clips of Owen going wow. Right, so now what I'm going to do is just open up Palindrome, and I'm just going to take one of these wows and just drag and drop it into this box here, and that'll load it in. So what Palindrome is a granular synthesizer. Basically, what a granular synthesizer does is it takes a bit of audio and repeats it very quickly. We're talking like a few milliseconds, and just repeats that over and over again. And it uses that to create a tone, because if you play like a small section of audio, it'll actually behave like a waveform, essentially. I mean, if you're using most synthesizers and you're just using a square wave, all that's doing is playing that tiny little bit of a waveform over and over and over again really quickly, so it turns into a tone. Eventually, when you turn the pitch or the frequency of the oscillator down enough, you'll start hearing clicks rather than a tone, because it's cycling so slowly that you don't actually hear it as a tone. So here, if I play something, what it's doing is just grabbing a tiny bit of that audio and just repeating it over and over again. And I can change where it's picking that up from. So Like already there, we're getting super gnarly sounds from this. I mean, granular synthesis allows you to get like mad stuff on the go, really. It's great for that. So yeah, here in Palindrome, when you load the sample in, this start control will basically select where in the audio it's actually taking the loop from. And the size will dictate how long that loop is. So you'll notice when I increase the size, the pitch goes down, and when I decrease the size, the pitch goes up. When you decrease the size, you're taking a smaller chunk of the audio. And because it's a smaller chunk of the audio, it cycles quicker. That makes it a higher pitch because the frequency is actually quicker due to the fact just that you've got a smaller chunk of audio. So there, if I have the size at maximum, you can start hearing that it's actually a chunk of audio that's being repeated rather than like some sort of mad waveform. And especially if I play it at a lower pitch. Yeah, you just get a cycle of wow, but really low pitch. Wow, 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 wow. At the bottom here in Palindrome, you've got these numbers here. And if I drag one of these up to here and pop it there, right, and then I press this, it'll open up. This is actually like a envelope generator, and you can make the envelope as complicated as you want, really. I mean, you could do like mad envelopes like this, and then assign it to a parameter, and so there, it's kind of changing where the start point is. So this little control here, next to the one, will change how much this envelope's actually affecting the sound. So some sounds where you've got a bit of silence at the end of it, you'll want to be careful with this because, you know, if you end up in this region over here, it's just not going to play any sound because there isn't any sound there, right? So that's something to look out for. See, if I planned this better, I would have made sure that the bit of audio that I grabbed was only this chunk from the start of the waveform to the end of the waveform. I would have, you know, not had this stuff here, but oh well. So already here we're getting pretty glitchy, mad sounds, right? But with Palindrome, you can kind of go a bit further because there's 4 different samplers. So here I'm just going to load in different wows into each one. Yeah, so now I've got a different wow in each one. And you can choose different controls. So currently I'm just hearing sampler 1 though. Right, so this box here that we see in the center of the screen, in the center of the plugin, this thing, it's essentially like a fader between the different samplers. So if I move this over here, this corner you're getting sampler 1. You're getting sampler 2 here. And sampler 3 should be down in this corner. Yep. And then sampler 4 in the other corner. And what you can do is you can click on one of these and it's going to move this. And basically it's going to fade between the different sounds kind of automatically. So you can use this to get really crazy sounds. And you change the speed at which it goes around. And you can also add an envelope to the rate control as well, and that'll change the rate based upon the envelope. So I'm going to slow that down a bit so you can actually see what's going on. This scale control here basically changes how long the envelope is. So rather than like stretching out the envelope to make it longer, you want to use a scale control, and that'll just... You get it set to 20 milliseconds so fast you can't even see it go past, but you can see it. Yeah. And you can also loop that as well, which is pretty cool. So by looping it, you're basically turning it into a sort of LFO, really. Like, this is like a ramp LFO. And you can actually time it as well. You can click the metronome here, and that'll change it to like a scale of 8 bars. So every 8 bars this will cycle, but you can change that right down to like an 128th note. So this plugin, as you can maybe already tell, is just really great for creating mad glitchy sounds. The hardest part of it is to actually be able to, use it in a track, really, because it's so crazy and so out there that it might be a bit difficult to, find a good place for it. So one little trick I've seen from the IDM guy, like Mr. Bill, is that he'll just record a bunch of like mad sounds, and then he'll chop them up later and rearrange them so they actually fit in his track, and that could be a really good option for using palindromes, since you really quickly get the sounds that are just really out there and mad with this plugin. Right, so for Logic 10 users, I'm going to quickly show you how you can record the output of a plugin in real time. So if you do this, rather than having to program stuff into the piano roll or add automation, you can just tweak the controls and maybe play around with a MIDI keyboard or whatever, and just record the output in real time. So what you do is take the channel strip that you're using, that you got your sound on, and go to stereo out here, and instead select a bus. It doesn't really matter which bus, just pick any bus as long as you remember which it is, right? So here I've got this going to bus 5, right? Now I'm going to open up an audio channel, and for the input here, instead of selecting the default, I'm going to go to buses. I'm going to select bus 5, and I'm going to create that. Right, so now if I press record, yeah, so there, it's just recorded all of the audio that from that little mess about with the plugin. So I can play that back. So if I find a little section of it that I think is pretty cool, I can just cut that out and take that on its own, and then I could mix that in with another track. You could just mess about with this sort of stuff and save it somewhere. And if you're working on another track and you want some glitchy sound, you could just go, oh, I've got that time I was messing around with Palindrome and some sounds saved on my computer. I'll bring that in and I'll use that audio here. And that could be quite cool. So that's definitely a way that you could actually take the mad stuff that you get out of Palindrome and use it to actually create something a bit more structured, without having to spend ages sitting and automating everything so you get everything just right. You can just cut up the audio instead. But it is possible to actually come up with some quite melodic sounds. Rather than using all of the 4 samplers and fade between them, you maybe should just use the one and not have too much automation on it, and you can actually do things that are quite nice. Right, so here's an example of something that actually sounds a bit more melodic. I actually did create a pad sound, so I'll just let you listen to that. So that's an example of something that you could do with Palindrome that's a bit less crazy, which is something that I was actually worried about when I first got the plugin. I saw all of these demos of it and people were making mad stuff, and I was like, yeah, that's great, but what if I actually want to use the plugin to make something that's a bit more melodic? But it is possible. You just have to be really quite delicate with the way you control it. So here, the only automation that I've got going on is I've got one envelope, which I've set to a bar long, which is how long the chords go on for. And it's really slightly changing the start point. I mean, I don't know if you can see very well here, but next to where it's controlling where the start point is, it's just up slightly. And then I've only got the envelope actually going up slightly here as well. So it's only changing the start point by a really small amount just to slowly shift it. Because if you shift it quite a lot, you'll find that the pitch will change. And it stops being something that you can actually use melodically. After that, I've got an EQ on that's just clearing it up a bit, and then I've got a bit of chorus and a bit of delay on it to give it a bit of space and a bit of width. So one thing to note when you're using it in a melodic context is that it might not actually be tuned to the note that you're using. So I haven't checked this yet, and maybe it will be. But we'll go to metering and we'll pull up a tuner and I'll play a C note and see what it comes out with. Yeah, that's not too far off actually, surprisingly. But you see there, it's still quite a bit out. So if I was going to combine this with, say, another pad, an actual synth pad, and layer it up, that's going to be a bit too out of tune to actually use with it, and it might sound a bit dissonant. So you can just use the pitch control and the fine tune control with a tuner and just pull it into tune. And that should make it easier to actually layer up with other sounds. So right there, that pad sound is really unique, and it'd be quite hard for me to get a sound that was like that with synthesis. Even if I was using like a wavetable synthesizer, it's still, pretty unique. Right, so I'm going to wrap this video up now because it's probably too long already. If you've made it to the end of this, thanks a lot for watching. I hope you've actually come away with something useful from this, or at least entertained by it. And if you weren't and you've watched it all the way to the end, I mean, I don't know what you're doing with your life. You probably should be spending your time doing something better. If you enjoyed it, maybe subscribe to the channel, give me a like, something like that. And also, I've recently put out an electronic EP. It's like sort of Aphex-y, acidy sort of stuff under my electronic alias Ionian Spheres. Barely anybody's listened to it because I'm useless at marketing, so it's basically only a handful of my mates have actually listened to it so far. So if you're into that sort of music, I'll leave links in the description. It'd be awesome if you could check that out. But yeah, thanks a lot. I'll catch you next time. Or I won't if you didn't like this. I don't know. Whatever. Bye-bye.